So first things first, Robert. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Not too bad at all. So before we jump into what you've been up to lately, I would like to jump back to the beginning a little bit. Now, I don't know if you still remember the first song that you wrote, but what kind of age were you when music started to become a little bit more serious and you started to put some words onto paper?
I was very young, so I'm sort of this unique case of like I don't really remember a time where I wasn't playing.
Mm.
My mother was a piano teacher,
Okay.
um, and other members of my family played. Like we grew up around music and kind of all kinds. My mother loved classical and jazz, and then my uncle was a really great bluegrass guitar player, so we like went to bluegrass festivals, and I just like from probably my mother used to say 3 years old is when I really started playing piano, but I just don't remember not doing it.
Mm.
Um, and songwriting maybe came a little later, but was still quite young. And I don't really, I've been asked this question before and I don't really have a good answer.
Did your parents encourage you to pick up music, or was that something they kind of left you alone and you gravitated towards it anyway?
I teach a lot still, and I find this really interesting thing. Like, there definitely is pedagogy and like in my opinion preferred methods of teaching children, like
Mm.
ways to encourage them, like have a certain structure, but like at the end of the day some kids just get it and they just like it.
Yeah.
And I don't think my mother it wasn't like you have to practice sort of thing. Like it was more just like it was around me so much that it just was something that I wanted to do. And then when you're that young and you like have an aptitude for it, it's just so encouraging, because
Yeah.
somebody's like, "Oh my God, look, he can play this thing," and you're like, it's this little shot of dopamine, every time you. And then at least for me, I'm just like want to know more and more about it, because there, as I found now, is no, there's no end to it. It's like
Mm.
this deeply rich pursuit that just I'll be doing it till I die, and always hopefully be excited about it, and like always finding somebody who's better at something and being like, that's so cool, I want to learn that.
Right. Well, yeah, hopefully I think I've been talking to a lot of musicians over the years, and I think keeping that kind of childlike excitement is really important. Was there a turning point, especially early on, or maybe just something, a gig that you played, or something that kind of put you on the path, kind of to where you are now, where you felt like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life, and I'm gonna pursue this dream.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was just so strange because as long as I can remember, this is what I kind of knew I was going to do. I
Mm.
dropped out of high school.
Okay.
I didn't finish, like, I just sort of knew at a very young age, like, I'm going to be a musician. All of this other stuff is sort of in the way of that goal. And there were difficult times around that. Like, even my mother, being a piano player, wasn't super psyched that I wanted to drop out of school.
Mm.
Um, but I just sort of always knew. And in the back of my mind, I was like, well, I could go to college for 4 more years after finishing high school and just keep doing what I'm doing anyway, or I could just start playing and, trying to figure it out. And yeah, I think maybe when I was very young, the Chicago Bulls, the basketball team,
Yeah.
were like in their heyday. And for a brief moment, I thought I wanted to be a professional basketball player, but I was, probably 8 or 9 years old.
I, d- I had the same thing. I grew up with basketball, and then once I stopped growing at
Yeah,
about 6 feet, I was okay. I'm not going to be good enough.
I don't think we have a chance, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. So that dream died quickly. It's probably a mercy killing.
Yeah.
When it comes to kind of honing your craft, then, because your mother was a piano teacher, you play guitar really well, which I
Thank
can
you.
hear from just listening to yesterday's news. But how do you see that road to where you are now, in a way, where you mentioned kind of always wanting to learn more? So how did you kind of approach your craft?
I've just always been excited about it. And still, like, and I tell this to my students too, there's a lot of things that I know, for instance, that I should do. Like, I want to learn this Bach piece on piano that I really
Mm,
like, or I want to, like, go through the Hanon book and learn all these exercises, or I want to go through all those cool Coltrane sort of reharms for jazz guitar or whatever. Like, those things are interesting to me, and there are times in my life where I pursue those fervently and I really dive into music like that. But generally what I found is whatever is exciting to me in the moment uh, is what I should focus on.
mm.
So, like, even if that's as simple as like learning a stupid Billy Joel song, like, it's not something that's necessarily going to take me leaps and bounds and make me better, but what it will do is keep me at the piano for a longer period of time. And like right now, the past few days, I've been practicing just really slowly playing through 251s on the piano, and like trying to play really effortlessly improvise lines that they don't jump around. They're all, it's kind of, I was reading this book called Effortless Mastery by this guy, Kenny
Mm.
Warner. Um, and just sort of like playing and not forcing anything, just improvising over changes and going to the next natural conclusion based on like what I'm hearing rather than what my hands are doing. And so anyway, all that to say, like, I've always just kind of followed whatever was interesting. And at times I've gotten super into jazz or bluegrass guitar or Travis picking,
Okay.
or I went through this big Irish music phase a few years ago and was just like, I'm going to learn all these Irish tunes. And kind of wherever I'm at, like just staying with it, staying in it until it's not interesting anymore. I've found that to be to my benefit, both as a player and a songwriter, because all that stuff, I don't know, it informs what you're doing as a writer. I spent years playing and singing country songs and learning jazz tunes, and I feel like all that stuff now when I write, it's like a part of my vocabulary.
Mm.
And I mean, like last night, I went up to the studio and I played drums for an hour, just like
Okay.
played along to a jazz record. Like, that's not necessarily benefiting my piano playing as a part of
Sure.
my overreaching goal, but it was exciting, and I do notice benefits. you
No,
know?
that totally makes sense. I mean, if I've bought a piano and I'm trying to learn that, I have no skills, but I'm trying to learn slowly. So, but it's a really nice process because you see the progression, and even if I do have a guitar as well, and you do see commonalities and patterns. Oh, if that's how it works with notes and stuff. So it's I do think it's very beneficial to learn different types of music and different instruments.
And it's discovery. Like, as you're learning the piano, something that's new to you, the distance between like starting and getting pretty good is so short in comparison to like after playing guitar my whole life. Like, it's pretty difficult for me to notice something that I'm working on improving me
Mm,
drastically. Like,
sure.
it's like, but that early phase where you're like, ooh, this is new, like, I don't know how to play a drum beat or whatever. Like, that's like, you get so much better so fast and it feels really cool. you
Yeah,
know?
and it keeps you going. And as you
Yeah.
mentioned, it allows you to keep that childlike or naivete almost to keep
Yeah.
that excitement. But it's interesting because you mentioned once you're into something, you do go all out, and so when it comes to yesterday's news, then what gave rise to the sound of that album? Because it is very stripped down, it is very direct, and in your, I mean, you can hear everything you play, you can hear everything you sing. So what gave rise to that
I
sonic
mean,
landscape?
it was a culmination of things. And sometimes I feel like, talking about music, we do this thing where we make something, and not just music, it's kind of everything. We make a decision, we create something, and then after the fact we're asked like, well, why did you do this? And then we come up with a cool story for why why we did it,
Yeah.
when in actuality, like, I don't know. I feel more so now than ever that there's something just like very dark and mysterious happening with the creative process where like, I definitely have made a series of albums that were much more arranged, produced, full
Mm,
band,
sure.
like sonic explorations in one way. And inevitably we respond to previous work that we've made with new work we make. In some ways we're having this conversation with ourselves about like, well, I did this and now I'm going to do this and this is interesting to me now because I've already explored this other space. So there was definitely a part of that. I mean, with this record I just really wanted to lean into um, just patience and quiet and try and just explore the idea that dynamic, which usually is like, from here to here, maybe the whole thing shifts down
Mm,
and like that lower dynamic volume is lower than it's ever been in my mind, and then it never really gets to this climactic sort of high. I don't know, that was a guiding principle in both the writing and the recording of just like, I want to keep a lid on everything and make it feel very patient and sort of sit in a groove longer than I would, like allow more space to happen than I normally would. And for me it was just like, this is interesting right now. It's something I haven't really explored before.
mm,
Like as a songwriter, I tend to be pretty concise and almost like scientific sometimes in the way that
mm,
I like, well, this section needs to be exactly 2 bars, and that, like the construction of a song is
sure.
really important to me, and for a long time, I've approached it sort of like a short story writer. Like I need to have sort of lean and sturdy bones that don't. I don't want any words or music to be wasted because it's
Mm,
only 3 minutes. So I've always sort of approached it like that, like Russian short stories or something. Like you
sure.
only have so much time to say what you're saying. So I'm really good at being like, get rid of that, get rid of that. And on this record, I kind of wanted to just like let go of that and just, I don't know, sit in things longer, be a little more abstract.
Yeah, yeah, you have a couple of instrumental songs that flow out of that, I suppose, as well, where you're just playing and think, okay, no, this is really cool, so let's just keep going with it.
Totally, yeah. And there was part of me when I was writing those where I was like, maybe I'll put words to this. And then as I kept going, I was like, this is fucking cool. I would listen to this.
But I can imagine when you have an approach like that, and especially what you mentioned, kind of the darker tones or that shift downwards. Does that affect the type of lyrics that come out then? Because it's more quiet and in a way more in your face almost, even though it's less loud.
It's naked and
Mm,
exposed in a way that other stuff isn't, and it's vulnerable. And yeah, I do think you sometimes, I don't think you can separate the two, the music and the lyrics. Like,
sure.
again, there's this dark, mysterious process. Like, definitely the music informs the lyrics, but then the lyrics inform the music, and it's this dance between
Mm,
those things that, like, to me, I feel like when I'm doing it right and I'm excited about something I've written, they just are working together and they're just inseparable. I don't know. I feel like that's one thing I'm looking for a lot when I'm writing is like from sentence to sentence and note to note, am I still interested in this? Am I
mm,
still moving in a direction I want to be moving? And like, is anything that my ego is doing betraying the feeling of, like just being very cognizant of like this cool thing that I want to do might be betraying the feeling or the tone of the song. You know what I mean?
mm,
Like just
sure.
trying to not get in my own way, not like think too much. Just
And
like,
let the song be what it's supposed to be.
yeah.
This is going to be a terrible question. I suppose there's no answer to it. But when do you know that you've hit that? Then is it just a gut feeling?
It is just a gut feeling, and I think that you get better at knowing when to walk away, or at
Mm.
least I have. I've gotten much better. I mean, there's lyrics all over this most recent record that some of them don't even totally make sense to me. And previously in my life, I would have fixed them. I would have needled them. And there's something just, I don't know. There's just some feeling that I get when I'm like, this is right. I don't even fucking know what it means, but it feels right. I like the sound of the words, like, I don't know. It's something beyond being clever. It's like just trusting a lot of this stuff has to do with just where my headspace is personally now, like,
Okay.
just sort of spiritually. Yeah, that's a loaded word, because I am very much a materialist, atheist.
Sure.
Like, don't tend towards magical thinking very often,
Sure.
but in regards to music and in regards to how I want to live my life and flow through my life, like be in the world, I'm very focused right now on just like being in the moment, constant sort of presence, and also just like not feeling out of place in the
Mm.
world, feeling like I belong here just as much as anything, like feeling like a real function of the universe.
Sure.
And I don't know, like that's just kind of where I'm at lately. Like I feel like, especially speaking of religion, especially Christianity, and kind of a lot of Western religion is like based on this idea that we don't belong here, like that we are somehow flawed, and
Right.
the only way that we can be redeemed is through the grace of like, and I just lately,
Or paying your way off like the Catholics do.
yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Like, if trees are natural and grass is natural and animals are natural, like everything we're doing, being on a Zoom call and making music and driving a car, like it is just as natural. Like
Mm.
we're just functioning exactly the way that we're supposed to be functioning in whatever reality this is.
Yeah, but
So
one line that there's a line I can't remember it exactly, but there was a period I listened to a lot of kind of Zen Buddhist
yeah,
lectures by a guy called Alan Watts,
I
and
love it.
yeah, he's amazing, and he had this line of something like, "What we really are is kind of the manifestation of the fabric of human existence in this universe," or something like that, and it kind of makes sense. I mean. Uh, but again, I get that I don't like the word spiritual as well, so I get that whole element
Yeah,
as well. I don't want to be too kind of out there as well.
yeah. Well, the only reason I bring that stuff up is because I feel like the music I'm making now is very much a product of that mindset.
Mm,
And more, I feel like the only way to be effective at music is to be very present in it and to like try and stop thinking. Like
mm,
and at this point, like I played music my whole life, like I'm fine, I can play, and just
yeah.
to let that sort of like automatic thing take over and let my subconscious do some of the work. I feel like the end result is better and I like it more when I'm not so in my head, you
Mm.
know?
But that's interesting because you mentioned well, the way you're right. So, but also that some songs that you've written you don't fully understand yet. So have there been songs that over time have surprised you in a way, or especially on this new album where you kind of figure out, oh, maybe I was talking about my kids, or maybe I was thinking about this at the time.
Yeah, and with the writing of them, like I think a lot of people write songs in this way where they go, okay, this song is called I don't know, it's whatever title, and then
Mm,
I know what this song is going to be about, and now I'm going to organize the song around this idea. Like I
mm,
want to write a song about X, and now I'll write the song about X. Like I don't really like to do that anymore. Now it's more like play, sing, some words sort of happen. And then as you're writing, you're kind of following each word. And in a way, you're like surprising yourself. You're like, well, that took a weird turn, but I like it. Let's see where this goes, and just like following this narrative thread, not, and I can only assume, I'm suspicious that narrative fiction writers, like great short story writers, novelists, I can't imagine that when you're embarking on a 1,000-page novel, that you know exactly what it's going to be about. You know what I
mm.
mean? Like it just seems like too massive of an undertaking.
It's
Um,
it's probably impossible. I did watch some podcasts or interviews with people like Stephen King and those really prolific writers. And one thing that came through was that they have like the barest of bones. They know where this story is going, but everything in between is still up for debate or is still up
yeah.
for. And that's a really interesting. But in terms of your album, then, for instance, a song like "Yesterday's News," because that can be interpreted in so many ways and so many. That does it depend on the day for your interpretation as well. How you feel about kind of the
Yeah, I mean,
notion of yesterday's news?
that one is, in some ways, it's the title track, but it's also a bit of an outlier on the record
Okay.
because it was so much written in the tradition of like Cole Porter, Hoagie Carmichael,
Mm.
like early American jazz and sort of like show tune music. Like, as I started writing it, I kind of was like, okay, I'm not going to overthink this one. This feels to me like a jazz standard is what it wants to be.
Mm.
Like, so yeah, the lyrics to that one, I send music sometimes to a good friend just to like as I'm writing it, see what he thinks. And there were some lyrics that he's like, these lyrics aren't great. They're a little like saccharine or cheesy. And I thought about it a lot and I was like, yeah, they are, but I think that's what it needs to be. Like
Mm.
looking at some of those Cole Porter tunes, I don't know, like the lyrics are just fucking silly. They're almost childish. Like it's just like, but there's something really magical in that because I feel like they weren't getting too hung up. It's very like plain spoken. And yeah, I mean, it in my mind was about just sort of like this feeling of anxiety that we all have that our best days are behind us and that we're getting older and like I don't fucking understand TikTok and like
I feel you.
and then like just that the world is moving quickly and sort of leaving you behind.
Mm.
And I don't know, there was something in that I felt was revelatory. I felt a sense of like release, I think, with this album as a whole, and just feeling like, okay, well, maybe what I'm saying subconsciously is that I want to be out of that race, at least as far as my motivations are concerned. Like
Sure.
I don't want to play this game anymore where I'm like, okay, the next record's coming out. I hope it performs better than the last one. I hope I have a single. I need to hit radio. I hope there's more people at the show. Like all that shit is just toxic to being creative.
Sure.
And I feel like some of it was not only causing me a lot of personal stress and anxiety, but it was affecting the music and
Mm.
making my output just not what I wanted it to be at all times, and so this whole record was sort of a release of that, of just like, I'm putting it out on my own label. There's no singles. There's like 5 songs that are over 5 minutes. Like, I mean, it's called fucking Yesterday's News. Like it's just very plainly like, I really wanted it to just be like, I don't give a fuck. I like this music. It's gonna be cool. It's fine.
But that must be, well, and you kind of mentioned this already, but that must be quite a liberating feeling where you're chasing this yeah, this success in a way, this illusion of success in a way, and that I've fallen victim to it as well when you're younger, and as you get older, you start to put things a bit in perspective. So, but that must feel very liberating now that you can make music as freely as you like, as without any other thoughts competing for the creative output. Or I don't know if that I phrased
Yeah,
that right,
yeah.
but
No, I mean, there's always, if you're doing this as a career, there's always financial concerns. Like I
right.
have a family, and there has to be a certain amount of money made to keep everything going. But what I'm trying to do, and what I feel like I'm getting better at, is fully compartmentalizing those ideas and treating my art as my art, and it's something that I don't do for money or success. And the other things that I do, whether it's marketing or fucking Instagram or
Sure.
whatever.
And things like this. So thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. I like talking about music. It's fun. So this is like probably the most painless of all.
That's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, and we need people to come to the shows. So like, hopefully this helps.